Hello, Josie. Welcome to the Sacred Remembering podcast.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for having me. Such a pleasure.
It's already a joy to have you here. Thank you for joining me. I would love for you to introduce yourself with your full name and the titles that you carry.
Yes. My name is Iosellev Castañeda Morales, but I go by Josie. It's so much easier. And my title is I'm a modern day curandera. That is all I do for a living. And that is really who I am.
Yes, and you've recently written a beautiful book. It's very aesthetically beautiful. It's wonderful to hold.
Somebody said that to me this week. They were like, it's so nice. I'm like, I
It's
know.
so yummy. And it's got these red and sort of traditional and cultural, like folky sorts of prints on it. It's so beautiful. Latina Herbalism, a beginner's guide to modern curanderismo, healing plants
Wonderful.
and
You got
folk
it.
folk traditions of the Americas. Yes, I don't speak Spanish. I did a little bit 20 years ago, but I do not anymore. I apologize for any mispronunciations today, but feel free to correct me and just bring your full self today. And so let's start with your sacred remembering journey, with your journey. We haven't met before today. I got to spend some time with your book this morning and learn a little bit about your life journey. But I know that listeners love a good story about modern women and remembering and coming back to the healing arts, et cetera, et cetera. So please take it away and just tell us the story that arises today, the version of the story that wants to be told today.
I love that because you're absolutely right. Sometimes you have a version in mind and what comes out of your mouth is totally different. So let's focus on what I want to share today. It's so funny because a lot of people have asked me throughout my life. This is sort of like my second, I want to say the second time I've changed my life, right? And people always say, well, how did you do it? And it's like,
Ah,
wow. And so I'm very keen on telling people my story.
yeah.
And so I was born in Mexico. My father was Cuban. My mother is a Mexican tilted indigenous woman. And when I was 7 years old, we lived in Mexico. My father said to my mom, I have to go back with my people. And that meant Miami, Florida.
Okay.
So we came back to Florida because my dad had lived here at that point in his life, probably for like 10 years, maybe, or a little bit longer. Then he went to Mexico. That's where my parents met. And then eventually we came back to the United States. And I grew up in Miami, what I would consider a very linear life, which is a beginning, a middle, and end, which is you're born, you go to school, you get an education, you get married, you get a good job, you have the children, you buy the house, you get the car, all of that stuff. And then,
What you're
that's it. You
supposed to do.
retire,
Yeah.
right? And then you retire, and and so that's a very clear beginning, middle, and end. And somewhere around in there, I spiraled out of that particular linear life. And so for me, what that looked like was when I turned 17, I went to New York City. I became a fashion designer. I worked in the fashion world for 20 years. And so within those 20 years, and if you can imagine the fashion industry, I had to find what I now call coping mechanisms to actually survive that. And so it started very simply with meditation. And then it
Mm.
was from meditation, it was yoga. And then from yoga, it was herbalism and Ayurveda. And then from there, I woke up one day and I was like, wait a minute, we have this, like, I grew up with all this. I grew up with this whole
Mhm.
idea of herbs. When I was young, we didn't go to the doctor. My parents
Mhm.
come from very humble backgrounds. And so for them, a doctor was sort of like a luxury, as it
Mhm.
is with a lot of people who lived humble lives. And so for me, like I remember, I mean, we were living in the city and we weren't necessarily humble, but that was their roots. And so
Mhm.
doctors were not something that we went to most of the time. We did everything at home. And so one of the recipes I give in the store in the book is my dad used to make this one thing for me because I used to suffer like bronchial issues and I used to hate it when I was young. And then he started making it for me again because I got chikungunya, which is like a dengue virus. And he started making it for me again. And I was like, oh my God, like this is the stuff I used to drink. I really enjoy it now as an adult. It's so different.
Mm.
But that's sort of like how I came to the situation of where I am today, to the healing arts that I do today. I realized, and this is a span, I want to say, of like 12 years. Yeah, of
Mm.
12 years, diving into other modalities. I found my way back to where I am today, which is a modern day curandera. Funny enough, my both of my great grandparents and both families, Mexican and Cubans, were also what we consider curanderos.
Mm,
Curanderos are healers.
mm.
Um, and so, it doesn't surprise me that I am here today and that I enjoy it so much, because it's definitely something that I would say is part of my blood. But to get here, I had to
Mm.
sort of do that, sort of like spiral out, of the basic traditional idea of life. So
I
yeah, so that's
love, yeah, I love how you said that. Like there's the linear path, and then I had to spiral out. Like that is,
yeah,
yes, that is sacred remembering. And I've never heard it said that way. Like that is, it's just amazing. Yeah, linear versus spiral. And yeah, this
yeah.
returning and homecoming. Okay, so both of your grandmothers or great grandmothers?
Both of my great grandmothers, and I believe my great grandfather on my father's side. Yeah,
Amazing. Okay, so how is it's so funny because I can say it in my head, but I should have practiced speaking this out loud more. Nope, butchered it. Curanderismo.
there you go.
Thank you. How is it different from other healing modalities? And you also call yourself a yerbera, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So how is this different? Unique.
I love how your Spanish is coming back slowly.
It
By the end of the
was
podcast, it's going to be there.
it was much better in my head.
No, you're doing great. Trust me, you're doing great. You're doing fantastic. So yeah, so curanderismo is what we call the school of healing, and within
Mm,
curanderismo, there's different categories. One of those categories is what we call somebody a yerbera, or somebody who works with herbs, or yerbero. In Spanish we have feminine and masculine for words.
mhm,
For me, I'm a yerbera because I started with herbs, and I, even though I do energetic rituals and energetic work, I love herbs and I always go back to them. And so I call
mm,
myself a yerbera. That is my category. But within curanderismo, we also have people who do hueseros or hueseras, which are people who technically work with the bones and the tendons and the muscles, if you want to call them
mm,
masseuses. But again, there's an extra layer, which I'll talk about in a minute. We also have what we call parteras, which are both the doula and the midwife together.
mm,
That's one other
mm,
category. And then you have curanderos and curanderas who kind of bridge a little bit of everything and energetic work, right? And
mm.
so what makes curanderismo a little bit different than other healing modalities is that we are very much aware that there is a don or a gift that somebody
Yeah.
has for healing. And
Mm.
it's not lineage based. So literally there's I can't remember the name of the book. I feel like every time I sit with somebody, I'm like, I should have all these stacks of books so I can go back and look. But
All the books
and I'm
that
looking,
influence your journey.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because I'm looking up and I'm looking at my shelf and I'm like, it's right in there. But there's a book that talks only about stories of different curanderos and curanderas. And some of these people,
Mm,
they wake up at age 30, 32, 34, 45, whatever. They wake up and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I'm here in this world to actually help people and support people. And, and they all of a sudden they know things and they do things and they support their community in healing. Like it can happen that way, which is one of the things
mm,
that I think is very unique within this particular practice. And one of the beautiful things that I tell people is this practice is a living tradition. You go to
mhm,
Mexico, you go to Guatemala, you go to Peru, you go to all these places, and there are people there who call themselves curanderos and curanderas. And when they're in right relationship with this particular essence of healing, they will help you and support you in beautiful ways. And so, to me, it's a living tradition, and
mm.
it's something that I love to share, because a lot of people think that it's only lineage based and only certain people can do it. And, and it isn't. There are spontaneous awakenings, if you want to call them that, of
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's what makes this particular lineage very different. Also, what makes it a little bit not just different, but maybe why people think otherwise is because it's a relationship that people have built with certain plants, usually from a place, right? So for example,
Hmm.
there's a lot of healers in Texas, in Arizona, right? And they heal with certain herbs that grow around them because there's
Right.
a bounty of them. And so what happens is that there's a relationship between that person and that herb. It goes beyond what's the herb, what does it do, how can I use it? Like we don't do that. We actually get very, very deep into the essence and energetics of the herbs, and the example I give in the
Mm,
book is my father. My father
hmm.
used Jamaican vervain for everything. And funny enough, it did everything it asked, you know? So it's really interesting because that is what I think makes curanderismo really unique in that way. And there may be other
Mm,
traditions in the world that I don't know about, but you know, for sure, that's what
mm.
for me makes it so beautiful and so different, so unique.
Beautiful. I want to go back to the don for a moment,
Yes.
the gift of
Yeah.
healing. And so you said that someone, and sometimes I ask questions because they're coming from me, and sometimes I ask questions because I am like sensing them in the field. And this is like one
Yeah.
that I'm sensing for the audience, you know. So when that um dawn, that like the gift kind of awakens in a
Yeah.
person, you said sometimes at 30, sometimes like
Hmm.
at any like stage or age in life, that spiraling and that remembering can happen, spiraling in a good way back to the truth,
Yeah.
right? And so does that person then say, okay, I feel it, I feel the gift? Is there any kind of external permission that is like needed or sought? Or is it really from the internal, like from the remembering and the questing and the like, this is my truth. I am this.
Yeah, I would say a lot of those particular cases are really truth because
Yeah.
they will end their life as healers. It's not like they woke up and saw this on TikTok because we're living very different times. So these are stories from these are stories from like the 40s and the 50s. You know, we're it doesn't happen as often now. Um, it happens actually. You know, I've read some stories where it happens to younger children because they're in the spaces where there's healers around. So that's a little different
Yes.
because that's also
Yes.
influence, right? But like we're talking like 40s and 50s and 60s
Right.
where this happens to people. So there isn't an influence. It's really something that comes out through them, and they definitely pass away with that gift. It's not like they're doing it for like 5 years and then they move on. And like, no, this is
Yeah.
their life completely changes. So yeah, so
Yeah.
I would say in those cases, you know, and that's how you know. And you know, for the listeners out there and the watchers, if anybody ever says, "Oh, I can heal you," the questions to always ask is, "How long have you been doing this? And is this a family lineage?" And if they're like, "Well,
Mm.
no," you know, like those questions, especially if they're asked in truth, you know, you can tell immediately if somebody's really doing this because they love humanity, because really that's what this is why we do it, you know.
Right. Right.
Or if they're just sort of like diving their toes to see if they can make extra money, or you know, if they're a
Hmm.
charlatan, or they're like, yeah, like those would be the questions to ask. But no, these people and these stories, they're from people who just it
Mm.
just stems out of them. And I do
Mm.
find that sometimes this happens when people have like tragic accidents or something like that, and so they're I the way I see it is their energy field shifts, and
Mm.
something
Mm.
opens up that wasn't there before. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which probably needed to happen on the soul path so
Hmm.
that they like do it in
Right.
this lifetime. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
I would like to shift into the topic of the herbs, the herbera, the relationship with herbs. You said earlier the essence of each herb, and also bridge into talking about like frequency medicine. And there are different types of frequency medicine. I'm asking a very broad question. You can open up the answer however you wish, but let's talk about like the essence of the herb, the frequency of the herb, and how that is used. And even, you know, if people have just heard of like herbalism, you know, in wherever they live, obviously, like you were talking about place, people of place. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and these mountains, like we have our local herbalists, and I think they're all women that I know. I trust these women that I'm like, if I need to know something about the herbs in this place, I know who I'm going to, right? Because they have developed that relationship with these like plant medicines. So people have heard of herbalism, but I would love to open it up to talk about the real application of this, because I think sometimes it's like, well, I have my cup of herbal tea, you know, or but like how are we appreciating the frequencies of these medicines and using the frequencies of these medicines, and how do you use them?
I love that question. And yeah, so one of the beautiful things about the book is that it's sectioned very specifically with what we will call folk herbalism. Yeah. So we have the beginning, which is my story. Then we have an enormous three chapters of not only the energetics of plant and their physical energetics, literally, which is really
Mm.
based on the elemental energies. You know, our ancestors had fire, water, air, earth. And so those four energies, which are elements, are in every plant, but then they refine that to be the qualities and the properties. So as an herbalist or a yerbera, which is, you know, folk traditional herbalist, what we talk about is when somebody comes with physical ailments, we say, well, we don't say to them because it's a little too much for them, but you know, we're listening, we're watching, we're having the platica and curanderismo. The platica or the heart talk is when we're getting all the
Mm.
information. You can call it, it's sort of like an intake form, but like live,
The
you know, because you're talking.
the platica, the
Yeah,
platica, the
yeah,
heart intake. I love that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because that's pretty much what we're doing, you know. And so
Yeah.
within that, we're watching the person, we're seeing their physical energy. Are they earth? Are they fire? Are they, you know, all of that stuff. And so right, you know, and I was talking about the book, right? So I talk about that, and then I talk about anatomy, because you have to know like what's going on in your body, like how does your body actually work. There's 8 systems and they're all working together, so how does it work? And so I talk about that in the book. And then the other thing I talk about is um we go into details, like if it's a digestive system, which is the sun energy, like we're talking about all these different things, right? But then the pre to last chapter, it's about energy. And I start that chapter with, remember everything I just told you? Forget all about it. Because now it's a completely different set of rules. And so those
Mm.
are the things that I think a lot of people get sort of intertwined. And one
Mm.
of the things that I was very fortunate to do was have a teacher called Julia Graves, who I learned flower essences. And through her teachings with flower essences, I learned how to work with energy and what I consider to be more appropriate. And the reason for that is in curanderismo, like I said, the platica is the core really of our way of working. And so we can sort of figure out through that platica whether something really is truly physical, because sometimes it is. For
Mm.
example, you hit your foot, you have a bruise, you have pain. That's physical. Now, if you start to think, well, why did I hit my foot and what? Like you're starting to blend two things that really sometimes don't have anything to do with each other. Right now, other people can come to me and say, you know, I realize that I'm self aware that there's some times that I wake up and I'm just, you know, I'm feeling very depressed and I don't know what it is. That for us in curanderismo, because it's a mental affliction, we say, okay, an emotional affliction, a mental affliction is an energetic affliction. That's when we talk about energy. And so they're
Mm.
very different things. For me, at least the way that I do my practice, I, you know, I don't tell people who hit their foot like, oh, well, let's see what else is going on in your. But no, you were distracted. You hit your foot. Use an herb. Put it on there. Done. You know.
Mhm.
But people can and do get a little too in depth and mix and match these two different energetic or physical and energetic modalities. You know, to me, they
Mm.
are different. I do approach them differently. I mean, I can have a whole discussion with you now about how I do that too, but it's extensive because there are differences for me. You know, the physical has obviously a very physical attribute system. Like you hit it, you see it,
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
energetic isn't there. But what I will share with you to sort of like put this together, which I share in my cacao ceremonies, I say, you know, cacao is supposed to be a cardiovascular um, herb that impacts the heart, right? And the heart vessel. And so what happens is if your heart is pumping, right, with the theobromine and the caffeine, it's going to affect our auric or subtle body, which is outside
Mhm.
of us, or what I really call our electromagnetic field, right?
Mhm.
That is the relationship between the body and what people will call the energetic, right? And vice versa, when somebody passes by you that you don't know and you've never seen and you're on the street and then all of a sudden you go, oh, that person gives me the creeps, right?
Mhm.
Their electromagnetic energy is mingling with yours and then you're
Mhm.
receiving a physical reaction. So that's sort of
Mhm.
like how that works for me and the way that I see it. And so,
Mm.
you know, I explain it to people that way. And I don't always give the same remedy for the different things that are ailing them, whether it's energetic and auric or whether it's physical, because they are different for me. And I definitely treat
Mhm.
them differently. And if you want to call diagnosis, you know, diagnostic, I diet, how do you say that? Diet.
Yeah, diagnose. Yeah, you diagnose
Thank
them
you.
differently. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so they are
Yeah.
different for me. And in the book, I'm very clear, you know, when we get to the energy part, because I give them a whole list of energetic ailments and diseases. and how to sort of work through them with different
Mm-hmm.
flowers and different herbs, but from a very different perspective. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
they're definitely different. They interweave each other, but I don't like a lot of herbalists. I see this a lot, especially now. And I honestly think it's a big trend on social media that a lot of people are
Mm.
following, where they're like, oh, for example, rose, its qualities are with the moon, and they do this. And it's like, well, like, is it really something or is it something you read
Mm-hmm.
or something you saw or something,
It's just very
um,
general. Yeah.
it is extremely
Yeah.
general and it's repeating other people's information. But for me,
Right.
one of the things that I do, and this is something that I do for myself, and I don't always recommend this to other people that I work with because it's not necessary. But, when you do healing work or you're in the healing arts, it
Right.
is important for you to really know what you're talking about. So if I want to know the true physical qualities of a plant, I will do a dieta, and I will have that plant for a certain amount of days in a certain way to actually get to know the plant. And if I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
energetic work, then I'll take that plant and do a different set, right? Like if I want to
Yeah.
for example, if I want to learn what rose really does to the body, I'll drink rose tisane for 7 days. And for us
Mm.
in real herbalism, it's not like you steep it for 2 minutes. You steep it overnight, you drink it without
Right.
sugar, and you just let it ride and see what happens. And you also,
Yeah.
along with that, change your lifestyle. You quiet everything else around you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You also change your food because you really want to get to know this plant, right? And so that's what
Mm-hmm.
I would do if I wanted to learn rose. But if I wanted to learn the qualities and energy of rose, I go outside and sit with it. I
Mm-hmm.
watch it. I breathe it in. And so it's a very different relationship that you're building. And what I see is people don't do that. One, they
Mm-hmm.
repeat other things. And then the other thing is they don't really get to know the plants, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's so like the modern day culture to just like a little bit of this, a little bit of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And um but there's true medicine here, obviously. And I've got a couple of different things moving in my head right now. So I think I want to share this because it's like come up like 4 times while you were sharing what you were sharing. So it might feel a little off topic, but and then I want to come back to more frequency medicine. But just a personal share. I have a teenage son, and when you were talking about like the differences between the physical and then the energetic and the emotional, or the mental and emotional being like the energetic realms, he, and this is kind of disclosing something that, I'm disclosing publicly what the teenager may not want me to share, but, forgive me. So he got very, very angry. So there's like all of this
Mm,
emotional stuff going on behind the, like what happened. And then he punched something hard out
mm,
of anger and broke a bone in his hand.
wow.
This was in June. And so, I was like shouting it like on Facebook, like, okay, I need herbs for, broken
Yeah.
bones, right? And then we're addressing the bone, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then the herbs for the bone and the healing. And then it's like, yeah, there was so much mental and emotional also going on. And I see into like the energetic soul realms, I
Mm,
would say. And so I was also seeing kind of like what his higher self was doing and the symbolism,
right.
of this. And a few days like after like we were so focused on the physical, and then things widened, and I
Mm-hmm.
just felt like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, his soul was like busting us out of old patterns. And so then I was like
Mm-hmm.
trusting, his soul, and I was saying yes to like working with him in all of these
Mm-hmm.
realms. And yeah, so I don't know. That it's just like a share. Like there was the physical, and then the emotional, the mental, the energetic was like it's whole other thing.
I love that. I love that. And I think so, if you were coming to me and you were telling me like this happened in my life, what is your suggestion? Is there any advice? Like what can I do to make this better? So,
Right.
from the curanderismo point, when we talk about anger, anger is repressed grief.
Exactly.
Or
Yeah. Right.
or there is repression in that person. So
Yeah.
my question to you as a mom would be like, well, did something happen that he's grieving that he doesn't know how to express? And then
Yes.
the other thing would be, right, all right.
Yes.
So then that's part of it. And then the other thing would be like, what are you as a mother doing that maybe your suffocating him and you got to
Yeah.
let go. Like
Yeah.
those are the things. And then we would give you flower essences, or we would give
Yeah.
you, um, I would make a custom blend for a mist, but I wouldn't give
Yeah.
you herbs for something like that because it's energetic. And so the herbs, yeah,
Right.
they'll work, but what's really going to work is getting to the root of that particular energy seed. Like, what is it? Right. And then,
Hmm.
obviously we would have a much more deeper conversation. And then if your son is
Yeah.
open to, he will come in for a consult and I would talk to him and be like, everything you tell me is confidence. What is it that's really bothering you? Right. Because there
Right.
is that underlying layer, like you're saying. And so that's the way curanderismo would look at this. And then
Yeah.
some people would actually give you like lens of maybe energetic slash physical teas, but they're giving them to you for the energetics, even though you might drink them, right? Because those are like really
Yeah.
experienced curanderos. They have a relationship with certain herbs. They know a certain blend is going to help with XYZ. But I would say that that's definitely the way that I would maybe sort of move into that space with you. And then the other thing,
Yeah.
because I just have you in front of you, this is what I do. Like, my question to you very specifically is what is it that you don't want to let go,
Oh,
of
yeah.
with your son? Like,
Right.
it's not just the your reaction of like, oh, maybe you're smothering him a little bit in certain ways, but what is it that you don't want to let go? Like, what part
Yeah.
of him do you feel like
Mm.
you want to continue to nurture that he's not allowing?
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
that, because that's a very, way you're describing it seems very, yeah, but it's actually a very explosive
Yeah.
reaction to
Right.
what I'm
Oh, it
gonna I'm
is.
gonna
Yeah.
guess it's a very teeny tiny thing that happened and it was just like,
Yeah.
and so there's
Well,
definitely stuff
yeah.
to work in there, but
Oh my gosh, there's so much. And I just want to say, it's kind of defensive. But he was mad at his father when he punched the tree,
mm,
but later, like into June and July, I mean, it's been a very
yeah.
it's a very big change. I mentioned to you before we came on that there's like big stuff
Hmm.
happening, and it's just been a big couple of months of like a lot of shift, and his soul is leading this, like leading
Yeah.
these, changes. And I so wish that we had more of this um, style of medicine, like
Yeah.
more broadly, because, to just be like, well, let's go to a therapist. Let's look at the
Right.
mental health. It's like, good God, you might as well like bang your head against a wall.
Yeah.
It's like not the medicine that's needed, So I
Right.
am, as a mother and a mystic and being who I
Yeah.
am, I'm definitely like working I would say I'm working in all the realms, but really I'm observing and
Yeah.
trusting and following the realms of the energetic and emotional spaces. And I will say too that given that I'm, approaching it that way, there's much less angst in me. I mean,
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
a very uncomfortable situation, right? But there's like a bigger trust
Yeah.
in the flow. And that's what,
Yeah.
in this medicine that you're talking about, it's like, well, let's look at what's really going on and let's look at the
Hmm.
nature of it. Like, let's look at the real flow
Yeah.
of it and the nature of these energetics and like help them to move through. So, on that note, let me ask you a question about, you know, the modern world is very busy.
Hmm.
Oh my
Hmm.
gosh, you lived in New York City. I can't even imagine. And sometimes it's like we don't realize that something's going on until it gets bad, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like acute.
Hmm.
And so we have these acute issues like acute disease or acute, breakages or, yeah, mental, physical
Yeah.
problems. So, how do you, I guess, merge or like if people have not been paying attention to the subtle
Right.
realms along the way and then they find themselves with like a big deal going on, how does curanderismo, did I get it a little bit more right? Um,
Perfect.
closer, warmer. How does that work with modern medicine? And if someone finds themselves like in an acute situation, is there still room to work in this way?
Absolutely. So I usually get people that, and this happens to be the type of healer that I am, which I had to learn my sort of style, but I usually get people who are in acute situations, but
Hmm.
have already been to an allopathic doctor.
Yeah,
And
like they've
then
already
yeah,
tried. Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
Or they're in the middle of that and then they come to me and they're, hey, is there
Yeah.
anything else I can do? So I'm lucky that I'm in that
Yeah.
way. So my recommendation always, 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 and the example I give is, if you cut yourself, what are you going to do? You actually, oh, let me clean the wound, let me cover it up and,
Yeah.
tend to it. So if you're in an acute emotional state, is the same thing. You call the therapist, you call your best friend, you call your mom and dad or whoever you have really trusted, and you let that out of your system, right? If you're having physical pain, you go to the ER. You act, if it's acute, you deal with it immediately. If you happen to have a really trustworthy herbalist, you can go to them immediately. They're probably going to
Hmm.
tell you go to the ER if it's really good.
Right. This is a
No,
big
that's,
thing. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
because, and it's not that we don't have trust in what, in traditional healing, but when it's acute and it gets to a point that it's sort of like a wake up call, because that's really what's happening, then you
Right.
need to treat it immediately. You can't wait. Oh, I'm going to wait a couple of days when the acupuncture opens. No, no, no. You need to deal with it immediately. Now, again, my style and the person that I am, I attract people who are already in that space, who have
Hmm.
already been to the therapist one or two times because they finally realized, or they had that one big fight or meltdown or whatever you want to call it. And then they were like, oh, and I also need another type of healing,
Hmm.
and then there's people who really, I don't think I've ever had somebody come to me. Well, I lied. When I travel, that happens to me a lot. So now I travel with like a kit of stuff and gloves because somehow, somewhere, people find me. Something happened, I fell, and so I have stuff that I can help with. And in that moment, I do my best to sort of alleviate. But I also have, again, the Platica while we're doing what we're doing, and it's a
Yeah.
very specific. I don't have, like therapists have special questions that they ask or a set of protocol questions they ask. I don't have that, but if I'm present, I'm in the moment. Things that I ask are
Right.
right, and so I trust that. And when that happens, I'm just there, and I try really hard to get them to see, hey, you need to either change your life, or you need to address certain things in your life, or you need to express certain things, because that's really,
Hmm.
really, really, really where the the the, the afflictions happen. When we're repressing
Hmm.
emotional, mental,
Hmm.
physical, when we're repressing, eventually it has to come out. It has to move through the body.
Yeah.
When it's energetic stuff, and then when it's physical stuff, then it's physical stuff. You get it
Hmm.
stitched, you get it cleaned, you put the band-aid over it. Like, those are things you have to do. um and so I would say, when it comes to curanderismo, you know, there's places, for example, in America, where the curanderos, they're there as real doctors, quote unquote, because I don't like that word, because it's also not appropriate, but they're there as the healer of the village, and they're in
Yeah.
a remote space. They know what herb is going to cure certain things. And for example, there is like different types of plants, specifically leaf plants, that they make to stop the bleeding, to make sure that the wound closes, to make sure that they clean everything when there's no soap and water. So, like, they know,
Right.
and for
Right.
those curanderos, amazing and beautiful, but they've learned to do that because of where they are, right? And for us in the city, a lot of it, and I started this because I lived in New York City, and people at my work would say, what are you doing? What do you know that you look so happy, and you have this giant
Mm.
workload, and you have 17 people that you manage? Like, what are you doing? Because I see you.
Mm.
I see you, and you're
Hmm.
not normal. And when I really woke up to this was when there was this grouchy guy that used to work with me, and he walked by me, and then we walked across each other, and then he called me, and I turned around, and he turned around. He goes, you're too happy. You're too damn happy. And I was like, what? I mean, it's not like
Uh-huh.
I was skipping and singing. I smiled. I said good morning, and he was just not was not happy
Yeah.
hearing that. And so
Yeah.
he told me that. He goes, "You're too damn happy," and he laughed. And I was like, and in that moment, I could have taken that any way, but I remember turning back in the hallway. I'm going back to where I was going, and I'm thinking, I must be doing something right.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I knew in
Yeah.
that moment I was doing something right. And so that to me was validation that what I was doing was working. And at that
Uh-huh.
point, I think it was just heavy on, like, it was heavy, heavy on meditation. I've been a meditator now for over 25 years. That's my
Yeah.
personal practice. It doesn't stop. And so, because I developed all this within a working environment, I know that there's a lot of people out there who don't really notice. But I think after 2020, people they're more aware, for sure. Um, but
Yeah.
but people don't notice until, like you said, it's acute. But when they do notice, they act. And I think that's really,
Hmm.
it's important to notice and to validate that. Um, but yeah, but for me, the afflictions of today are very different, and there are a lot of it is, it is mental affliction that leads to physical affliction for sure. There
Mm-hmm.
is that, and a lot of it is just our lifestyles. We want more,
Yeah.
we need more. Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's all about clearing, clearing, clearing. What else can I get rid of? But meantime, people want to add more and more and more and more and more, and eventually,
Right.
there's only so much you can hold. You know?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm in a very quiet period, especially with what's going on with my son. But I'm very quiet, very like attuned to the subtle
Mm-hmm.
realms right now. And um, the changes that needed to happen were not huge.
Hmm.
You know, that
Yeah.
it's like these subtle changes that when they are made, it's like, oh my gosh, that's the thing I've been looking for, right? But in a
Mm-hmm.
fast-paced life, you wouldn't catch it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't catch it. I wouldn't like so in a stress environment, those like patterns of tension are just like they
Mm-hmm.
feel like regular life, you
Yeah.
know? And then it's like, oh, it can actually change. And I think of, women like 40s and 50s and hormonal changes, and it feels
Mm-hmm.
like it can just like hit you. And then it's like, oh my gosh, where did this weight gain come from? And where did this, and then like you're fighting your own body hormonally. And this
Yeah.
is one of the things that I just kind of recently, I was like, oh, I just have like a little too much cortisol.
Yeah.
And so I started to pay attention to that and shift. And I am down 3 pounds in one
Wow.
week. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
those 10 pounds were there for like the last 2 years. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I was working out and I was like doing the things, but I wasn't really budging it. And then it was like, oh, this like subtle
Yeah.
cortisol shift. And even my heart paying attention to that,
Yeah.
just like loving myself differently. Literally 3 pounds came off.
Yeah.
And I'm
But that's
like,
because you're aware and you have that
right,
sensitivity. But
right,
for those people who don't have that, I mean, one of the first things I always tell people when they're having issues, specifically when they think it's life and this is the way things are supposed to be, it's
right.
like you actually need to
Yeah,
just sit down and be quiet. Find
right.
not even meditation, just find a contemplative sort of practice where you can sit down,
Right.
breathe, whether it's breath work, whether it's maybe serving yourself tea or reading a like you need, we thrive as humans, not just, I mean, stress is beautiful. In the plant world, stress makes kings and
Mm,
queens of the plant world. So they take that
mm,
stress and turn it around, right? But for us,
mm.
yes, stress makes us to some degree good, but you also need to go into the cocoon stage, into the
Yeah.
contemplative stage, into the place where you're going to integrate. And a lot of people forget that, and because again, we're in a
You
lifestyle
don't
where more, more,
stop.
more, go, 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 and
Yeah.
it's like actually, if you take a minute and a breath, the next time you go, 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 it's even better. And then you actually
Yeah.
are more aware because you're taking
Yeah.
that time. So yeah, so I mean, you're lucky because you're in that space already, and most people, the
Well,
reality is that they're not. But that's one of the ways they can get there. They can do a contemplative
mm.
practice, just sit down, breathe, do some
Do
breath work.
nothing, like literally do nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, breath work, yes, but like, yeah, doing nothing is probably some of the biggest medicine of my life for sure.
Yeah.
What is a limpia or platica?
Yeah.
Oh, you
So
talked about the platica. Okay, what is the
yes.
limpia?
Yeah, so the Platica, like we said, is like the core of curanderismo for me. It's where we
Uh-huh.
get to know the person. It's like I said, it's a heart intake, like what's happening, right? And then the limpia is about it's a physical, for the most part, it's a physical ritual that you do,
Yeah.
but it's meant to clear the energetics of the
Yeah.
body. Because again, like I said before, whatever you do to the physical body, it's going to resonate in the energetic, and vice versa. Whatever
Right.
you do in the energetic body is going to resonate in the physical. But Olympia is that Olympia. We have different elementals. We have fire limpias. We have
Mm.
water limpias. We have smoke limpias. We have herb limpias. We have all types of limpias in curanderismo, and they're meant to clear out the energetic. And
Mm-hmm.
these aren't things that you sort of like learn. For example, well, this herb will do this for you. Like nobody teaches that.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, people
Mm-hmm.
are like, you grab all these and you do this and you rub them on your body. Like that's kind of like how we
Mm-hmm.
learn. I tried though in the almost last page or the last chapter of the book. I think it's chapter, I want to say 10, before the interviews, I talk about again energetics, and I sort of give you some ideas of what herbs can help, and I kind of explain why. Again, all of my own, musings, but nobody explained that to me. Like when my mother does limpia for me, she'll just go out in the garden, she'll pick whatever herbs call her in that
Mm-hmm.
moment, and she's like, and she'll say, "Come outside." She doesn't even prep me for it. She's just come outside, and then she beats me with them. I mean, that's kind of like that works, because that's how really this is how intertwined in our life it is, and again,
Yeah.
the relationship that we have with the herbs is we go out there with them. Sometimes we sit down and she has a book, I have a little book, we read, and we're in the garden with them. So again, that's how
Mm.
we're building a
Right.
relationship. So when she says, when she feels that I need this, she's my mother, and she has, again, she sees me in a way I don't see myself, right? And we don't know what we don't know. And she's there for that. And so she's the witness to what I do. And so she'll say, "Come outside." And I don't always think it's the limpia, but like she already has a relationship with a certain herb that called her, that said, you know, this is the right time for her to have this kind of limpia. And that's what she'll do. So limpias are energetic cleanses, but we have so many different types, and we have, you know, recommended protocol. For example, when somebody goes through a deep trauma and they have what we call
Mm.
susto, or they're scared, or there's that
Mm.
what people now call PTSD, because that's kind of like what it
Yeah.
is. We do the egg cleanse, which comes from the African traditions, and so the egg cleanse is meant to like suck up all that bad energy, all that
Mm.
stagnant energy, all that dense energy. And so it's a protocol, because that's a big thing in
Mm-hmm.
curanderismo. Like, a lot of people will email me or message me on Instagram, "Hey, do you do the egg cleanse?" And for me, it's actually a very sacred kind of ritual. I
Mm-hmm.
don't do it for everybody, and I'll be honest with you, not everybody needs it, but there are some
Mm.
cases where it is necessary. Um, but again, because it's a living tradition, it changes with the curandero or curandera.
Mm.
But like, it is a protocol, but it's not always like that. So limpias, you know, we learn them by watching other people or other curanderos or teachers or family members. I had a woman once come and say, I got a limpia from my friend's mom. And I asked her, like, what were the circumstances? And literally, her mom was listening to their conversation and said, I think this is what you need. And she just gave her a
Mm-hmm.
limpia, and that was it. So
Uh-huh.
that woman, to me, is full on a curandera. She did, but she doesn't, she's not on social media. She's not doing stuff. But
Right.
I think, um, you know, a lot of people think limpias are something that you have to do, and it's
Mm.
necessary, and it isn't. It is, I would say, energetic hygiene for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
for the people that are in the healing arts, that's something I recommend weekly. Like even for me, even
Mm.
when I'm not seeing people, physically in my one-to-one sessions, I still do a water limpia for myself every week, no
Mm.
matter what,
Mm.
because it is very necessary for somebody like me who's doing this kind of work full on and full time, and even
Yeah.
somebody like you who's very sensitive. Like Olympia
Yeah.
is something that I would recommend weekly, just so you can have a nice and shiny, auric, energetic
Yeah.
body, so you can continue to do your work. So yeah.
I used to do Olympia. I had a hucha stone. I had a
Oh
stone
yeah.
that I did Olympias with for years. That was probably like 5 to 8 years ago. And then I still have the stone. I'll have to say hello to it and see what wants to happen.
Nice.
But as you're
Yes.
talking about that, I am usually very, very much called to the waters during the summertime in these mountains. I live in Western
Hmm.
North Carolina, and
Nice.
my mother's father's people are from this land, and so I have a relationship with the mountains, not necessarily the
Nice.
plants. Like I
Hmm.
could be a better student of the plants, but it's like the mountains themselves. But they'll call me
Yeah.
and they'll tell me to get in the particular areas of water. And as you
Beautiful.
were talking about that, I was feeling called. Next week is my daughter's birthday, and so that's usually like I don't do anything else on that day. It's very sacred, and I was like, where can I
Nice.
go in the mountains? And as you were talking about the Olympia, I was like, that's what I'm gonna do on that day. So
Nice. I
I'm gonna go
love
get
that.
in some mountain water and do Olympia. Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. I was called to take a man to this particular river sacred site here in Western North Carolina, and it felt like the grandmothers of the land
Yeah.
were telling me to do the limpia on him. So I did a limpia with roses and the river water.
Beautiful.
And it was like, I'm just working for the grandmothers. You know? And
I
I
love
don't know
that.
that I don't know that he got the point, but I did my job. I
You're a good student.
right.
Check that off. I love it. No, I think that's
uh,
beautiful.
yeah. Yeah.
Nice. I
Yeah.
love that. I love to hear these sort of like transmissions that people get, because they're really, you're attuned to it, and
Yeah.
definitely never hold that back. When I
Yeah.
when I some there's a couple of people that I see here in Florida who are also healers, and I have a really good friend, my beautiful friend Tara, and she's like, "Man, you're a healer's healer." And the first time she told me that, I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
And then I understood that, because sometimes we as healers, again, we don't know what we don't know, and so it happens when we don't listen to these transmissions.
Hmm.
When we're walking past somebody and we get this quick little message,
Mm.
not turning around and telling that person, "Hey, listen, I don't know you, but I just think you should know XYZ," and then continue to
Mm.
walk. When we don't do those kinds of things,
Hmm.
we turn off our light, and so it's really
Yeah.
important to continue to do that. So if you were called to do this on a man for whatever reasons, and even if you didn't get it, he benefited from it some way or another, for sure.
Yeah, something did. Yeah, I felt like I was doing the work of the ancestors, doing the work of the land. I'm not sure, doing the
Yeah,
work of the grandmothers. Yeah, and that was a few years ago. So a younger version of myself probably had a little bit more attachment to like,
right.
him getting it in some way. And now it's like I don't know. Just follow the
I love it.
directions, and each person is sovereign. So wonderful. I think one of the last questions I have for you, and feel free to talk about anything that's on your heart that we haven't spoken of yet, but I would love to ask you about ritual because I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a word that we hear in spiritual spaces. It kind of gets thrown around. And
Mm-hmm.
how would you speak of the sanctity of ritual?
Beautiful. Yeah. So I definitely think it's used too often.
Mhm.
There is for sure something where life is a ritual. I'm not define that.
Mm,
I think there is something really beautiful in approaching everything we do with consciousness. That to me is what that means. But there
mm,
are definitely individual stances where a sacred ritual needs to mean something a little deeper because it's marking either something really important in somebody's life, or it's a rite of passage for somebody and it needs to be celebrated. So,
mhm,
I don't use the word ritual a lot, you know, but a lot of people do. And I
mhm,
feel like that use makes it sort of seem like, oh, well, just do a little ritual. But you're actually engaging in the unseen, in the auric
mhm,
field, in the electromagnetic between you and whatever you're doing the ritual for. So it's
mm,
important to have consciousness around that for sure. And yes, there's different types of rituals for different types of reasons, but again, it's a sacred space because you're accessing the unseen, you're accessing the energetics, and even though we say it's energetic, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out and it dissipates, it also can and sometimes does do the opposite of what you expect, because you're not
mm,
conscious, because you're not present,
mhm,
because you're not, you're just doing something on a full moon that you saw somebody on TikTok or Instagram. And I keep going back to that because it's so rampant out there,
mhm.
and it just it makes my heart bleed, because that's not
Yeah.
meant, that's not the way it's meant to be.
No.
And I'm also very aware that, for me at least, when it's a real ritual, there's no photos, there's no Instagram. It's quiet,
Mhm,
it's potent, and the results are immediate, you know?
mm,
And so, yeah, for me, rituals are really sacred spaces. Those are the times where, if you want to even say this, you're talking to the divine directly. And so you
mhm,
don't approach the divine with like, hey, this is what, no, you come in with
mhm,
reverence, like,
mhm,
hi, I'm here. This is my name. I would really like this. If it's possible, if it's within my path, if it's part of my karma, or maybe make it an extra
mhm,
to my karma, but you come with reverence. And I think a lot of people has really lost that. And
mhm.
but those are my 2 cents. I feel like, a lot of what I think and do right now, and I don't know if it's the age, or maybe I'm turning into my mother, I don't know, but a lot of my ideas feel a little sort of old, or old school, and it's like,
Mm,
no, but I like that. There was a reason. why rituals were done at night, and why, there was fire, and like
Hmm.
there's a reason
Hmm.
for a lot of different things. And so
Right.
I feel like, yeah, when I think of rituals, I think that to me is one of the sacred spaces that we can
Yeah.
create. And
Yeah.
we need to approach them with love and consciousness and reverence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I,
yeah.
with what you were saying, like, am I turning into my mother? I think we turn into elders,
Yeah.
right? Like we,
Hmm.
and there's so much less room for bullshit. Like
Yeah.
elders don't sit around with drama. It's
Yeah.
not,
Absolutely.
it's like they are the medicine.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm 44 and sometimes I feel like I'm in a space. I let go of Instagram, I'm like, these
Hmm.
things aren't important. Like,
Mm-mm. Yeah.
what is on my heart to do and etc. But like society will tell you to use your energy in so many
Hmm.
ways that are not conducive to your soul or to nature or to the
Yeah.
women that we have been becoming, right? So I think
Hmm.
to let go of a lot of what seems to be the norm is a fantastic thing, right? Like to rise up in your own, not to rise up, not like a fight, but like
Right.
rise up, but just like stand strong, in
Yeah.
your own medicine. And um, yeah, I think that's the path
Yeah.
to elderhood, I imagine.
Yeah. No, and I totally believe that. And one of the beautiful things that's happened, at least with me, it's like, when I do these different gatherings a year with different places around the country,
Right.
and one of the beautiful things that's happened is, the youngers, right? Because I'm a little older than you. I'll be 47 in December. But
Okay.
like the younger women that come to me, and they come with a lot of reverence, which is really beautiful.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, there's a little understanding in them at a certain age, like, oh, all of that social media is bullshit. Like it's not really worth. It's not worth what I thought it was. The value of it is shifting for them, and it's
Yeah.
really beautiful because that's one of the
Mm.
reasons why I haven't completely turned my back on it, because some of them still
Mm.
find me through that space, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh, but the ones that do are really starting to do this. They're starting to question, like, is this really valuable in my life? Or like, how much value can I give it? And so those are the only
Yeah.
reasons I'm still on there. But if it was up to
Yeah.
me, I would be Baba Yaga. I would be in a hut in a forest. Leave me alone. I
Yeah.
understand why she was the way she was. Like, I get it now, and it's kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah. But no, I
Yeah.
understand that, and I think also for us who are in the healing arts, it's a very different energetic exchange. And I had a podcast and they were asking me these questions, where I was like, well, I'm a hermit. Like, I don't have all these things you're asking me because I'm a hermit. I kind of like all that. To me, it's everything else is a distraction.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm lucky that I tend to create and move through a space where what comes through me, I believe, is very truthful because of that. Because I'm not
Yeah.
influenced 15,000 visuals and things and listen and doing. I'm very quiet, and
Right.
I love that about me. And some people say or might think that it might not be what helps me move forward in the world, but for me it works. And if that means becoming an elder, I am down for it anytime.
I know.
No
I
chaos, no drama. I love it.
Yeah. Somewhere around 40, I was like, one day I'm gonna be an elder in these mountains. And
Ah,
it matters to me a lot,
yeah,
like I feel like it's what I came for in some ways.
nice.
So after the mothering, it's like,
Yeah,
okay, that was one thing, and then this is the next, and I'm on that bridge. And yeah, it very much matters to me. And I
I love
love,
that.
yeah,
I love that. And it makes me wonder, like, maybe if we stop thinking about, oh, when I'm done, I'm going to retire. Like, if you really think about it, and some
yeah,
people do, some people think, like, I'm going to be a grandmother, but not with all the the grandmother, in
right.
the corner, frail. Not like, but if you start thinking in that way, like, I'm going to be an elder. I love that. I love that because then I don't feel like, oh, I'm old, right? Like it like that doesn't. When I
No,
think of an elder, I
yeah.
think of, like you said, somebody who's badass, who's out there still doing things, and who's taking no shit. And like,
Wise.
when I
Yeah.
start thinking about it in that way, I'm like, wow, that's kind of nice. It shifts that perspective. I'm going to be retired. I'm going to be a grandma. I'm
No,
just going to,
yeah. Why? Yeah.
yeah,
Like, I know some female elders who like they hold their circles. They invite
yeah,
people in, but they don't run around. They don't like try to
yeah,
entertain anybody. They don't. need to
Yeah.
prove themselves on social media. They're,
Yep.
they're like medicine women
Yeah.
and like people come to them for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I love hearing what you were saying about the younger generation, like not getting totally, bought in or swept up into the
Yeah.
social media thing and thinking that that's life. Because I think some of us who, like, I'll speak for myself, like, trying to make a business in the first few years, you kind of get swept into that.
Hmm.
And then you're
Yeah.
like, wait, this isn't actually conducive to what I want to do or to my
Hmm.
energy usage and things like that. And it's like not as authentic as I
Yeah.
thought it was. And so I feel like
Also,
that,
when you're young, you're gonna shift. Like you're not gonna be that same
right.
exact person.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, there's the
Yeah.
expectation of that. I mean, and
Right.
that's just in general all cultures. But you're gonna, if you are
Yeah.
seven different people in your life, you're doing it right.
Right,
You
right.
know?
And like young women wanting to study with
Hmm.
you and like get offline,
Yeah.
get off of like the spiritual snippets that
Yeah.
are like 60 seconds of a, picture of a ritual or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, and get into the true like
Yeah.
training. Did I see that you have some sort of course or training
Oh,
upcoming?
yes, I am. September,
Yeah.
hopefully. Maybe might need to push it back to October.
Okay.
But September, I'm starting what I call El Camino. El Camino
Mm,
translates to the path. And this is
mm,
an 8-month container
mm,
for a course and an apprenticeship with me. We're going to follow sort of like the bones of the book, and we're going to do a lot more. So, yeah, so I'm excited because I feel like this is, I used to teach these courses in 2020, 21, and 22, which is sort of like where some of the bones of the book were in. But I
mm-hmm.
think now it's finally, it feels like a full container that I could do
Yeah.
4 months with somebody and then 4 months of apprenticeship, which is self-led, but I'm
Mm,
there,
yeah.
with custom stuff. But I'm really excited because I feel like finally this is going to be a really transformative experience for those that are really
Beautiful.
ready. Because it is a commitment.
Right.
I'm not going to say this is one of the things that I'm doing very differently is there is no recorded videos. You have to be present. You
Mm-hmm.
have to be there
I
because that
love
is how
that.
things work. Because if you're just
Yes.
gonna listen and be like, I'm just gonna watch, no, it hasn't worked. I got
No.
to tell you, it hasn't worked for a lot of people. So I'm hoping that the right people get called to this because I really do
Yeah.
feel like it's going to be a very beautiful experience for those
Ah,
who are brave enough to do it.
I
Yeah,
love that. The last container that I've held is just, it's not the same as it was last year. And I
yeah,
mean, like, I genuinely love every woman who participates in and feels called to anything I'm doing. But this year, like when the cameras weren't on or
yeah,
people weren't showing up, I was like, honestly,
yeah,
and I'm saying the most honest thing on my podcast for anyone to hear, but it's like, but that's how I roll. And it's like, well, then I'm not bringing the full medicine. Like
yeah,
you don't get the full medicine
yes,
to watch in a recording and never show up
no,
with your energy. Like
mm-hmm,
regardless of monetary exchange. It's like
exactly,
I'm done with that kind of
yeah,
thing. So there are transmissions inside of me
mm-hmm,
that I am looking for a home for
yeah,
because it doesn't feel like that place has been established yet. There's going to be changes with the podcast
yeah,
because like there are transmissions that want to come forward and I started to do energy transmissions on the podcast this year, but like
yeah,
it's like it needs to land somewhere. It
yeah,
needs like sacred space. And
yeah,
so I'm looking for the energetic slash, I guess, a business structure, but it's mostly like the energetic structure that
yeah.
wants to change so
It's
that,
presence for sure. Because this is what happens. I have another
yes.
friend of mine,
So you're
Erin.
naming that.
Yeah, yeah, and Erin, who's in the book also, one of the first interviews in the last chapter. She has her school of medicine mandala, and that's one of the things. She's like, these people, they come, it's recorded, they never physically show up, and it's like, what, like why? And for us, I mean,
Yeah.
and I know some people might do that when who are listening to the podcast, but it's for us, it's like, why would you do that? Why would you like have that monetary exchange and maybe watch 4 videos? Like, is that really all you wanted to learn? Because that's kind of like, it makes me very sad. And it as a teacher for her, she's like, what's the point of this? Like,
Right.
we want you to show up. We want you to be present.
Uh-huh.
There's an alchemy that happens when we're all there together, whether it's virtually or communally, it doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people would say, oh, but it's not the same. But the reality is the person that's leading that is what makes that shift.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, every time I bring people in community, whether it's virtually or in person, shifts happen. It happens because,
Thousand
but that's
percent.
because we're all there. Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
because we're all there, not because we're all watching it, 4 hours later. Like,
Right.
it's so important, and I think that is what I think is going to be the biggest kickback for what I'm, wanting to express here,
Yes.
because people, they're like, well, is it just going to be a recording that I can listen to? And it's like, yes, but you're only going to get the recording at the end of the month. You have to be present. And I'm putting myself out there because I'm also putting together a set of standards and protocols
Mm.
that help somebody else be certified in Latin herbalism. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
that comes from me. I'm quote unquote a certifiable organization, but you only get
Mm-hmm.
to do that if you're there more than 90% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, no. Like, there has to be, and for me also is
Yeah.
accountability. Accountability.
Right.
It's so important for people to hold themselves accountable to like learning. Because again, and I know that this is maybe the same for you. It's not just what's the herb, how do I use it, how much I use. No, that you can learn
No.
that off any book. Like, but if you
Yeah.
really want to have a relationship with herbs, if you really want to be a person that has that second layer of awareness with herbs, like that's what this is for. It's
Yeah.
not just, I mean, you can go to a variety of, there's like over 10,000 different online schools that you can do this at.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm offering, and that's not what I feel like you want to offer either. There
Mm.
has to be presence, there has to be, and that's honestly when the magic to me and the alchemy happens for sure.
Yeah, and I'm even sensing like I'm surprised that we're talking about this, but and I love it. I'm like, ooh, this is good medicine coming through because like this has been on my heart, and I haven't
Yeah.
really been trying to like problem solve it so much. It's just like,
Mhm.
what is the answer that wants to emerge? So I love that
Yeah.
this topic naturally emerged here today. And yeah, I'm going to be, well, obviously, us and everyone that's hearing this is like, oh, well, that
Yeah.
was a little cultivation, that was a little activation
Yeah.
for us to consider, right, how we engage our energy. And if we're,
Mhm.
I do it. I listen to talks passively, or I'll put it in
Mhm.
and walk my dog. And I did a container with Z Earth Star this year, and her Sundays were 5 hours long.
Mhm.
And the group was very, very large. I'm not going to sit still and look at a computer screen for 5 hours. And maybe I should have. And maybe that
Mhm.
was hard for
Yeah.
her. And I was in a different circle where I was one of the only ones present, and I stopped what I was doing, I got on the video, and I was like, I'm here with you, right? Because
Mm.
when that practitioner is giving the medicine, and like,
Yeah.
that is not supposed to go into an empty black Zoom box. It's
Mhm.
like, where is the
Yeah.
person? Where is the energetic? Where is like the
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
multi-dimensional like
Exactly.
exchange,
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
not just monetary. It's like we're
Yeah.
trying to share our medicine here.
Yeah.
So
Well, one of the things that I teach when I'm doing like the Reiki trainings, I'm very clear with people because I do my Reiki 1, 2, and 3 back to back. And the reason is I'm not here to make more students. I'm here to make masters. That's my gift to the world. If you want to
right,
continue to be a student of certain person for 4 years, go for it. I don't want to
right,
do that. I want you to practice. I want you to become a master. And mastery comes through practice. That's the only
yeah,
way that happens.
right,
Also, I'm a teacher that thrives on questions. Like, yes, i
yeah,
can
right.
i can be your dictionary and just blah 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 blah, but I thrive in questions. So
The
for me,
interaction, yeah,
yeah, like it makes a big difference, a big difference. And I think the quality of teaching when you have in-person teaching is completely
hmm,
different. And also
yeah,
specific for Latin herbalism, you know I took this really wonderful and amazing embroidery class from a woman in Chile. And she says, why do you think there's no books? Because our
mm,
stories were woven, or stories were
yeah, mm,
embroidered, all of that was burnt and it's disintegrates, and that's so beautiful. And so for me, it's also about that. We want to learn as
yeah,
we're present and orally, and like, I'm gonna have, and I guess I can say it now, I'm gonna have us embroider while we learn and weaving while we learn. Like, that is so important
mm,
because it's somatic and it'll stay in your body. Otherwise, like, it's, and that's such a difference. It's such a different way of approaching
yeah,
education and schooling. And to
right,
me also is a little bit sort of like taking out of the colonizer's hands instead of like, I'm
yeah,
just gonna sit
right,
here and like no, that's not
right,
how we
right.
learn.
Right. And when we try to write these things down, and I love,
Mm-hmm.
what you're holding has been a lot of oral tradition. And when
Mm-hmm.
we try to pare these things down to writing, and you've written a book, I'm also trying to write a book, but it's a book about these
Yeah.
like super huge concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, your gorgeous book, there's so much medicine in addition to this book, right?
Right.
It's like the medicine that transmits. This is a foundation. It makes it
Mm-hmm.
accessible to so many more people. It's a
Right.
beginning, it's like mini
Mm-hmm.
activations, it's medicine.
Right.
And then there's like so
Yeah.
much more. And I feel like, yeah, when we want to just consume information, like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
just tell me the information about
Right.
the herbs, or just tell me the information about your downloads. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
um, there is a transmission. And when we're all here together with this common intention, when we're in the room together, when we're in the class
Yeah.
together, and we're like curious, guess what's going to happen? Like, the presence of spirit is going to be in the room. Like,
Yeah.
more is going to happen where two or more
Absolutely.
are gathered. So it's like, yeah, I was a school teacher. I know what it's like to stand up in front of,
Mm-hmm.
people and deliver rote information. And
Yeah.
that is definitely not what I do, but it is difficult to get into the full space of the
Yeah.
channel when there's not that interaction. And yeah, I feel disappointed because this last resource group that I had, I felt there is such a
Mm.
huge download that's like trying to come
Right.
through, but it literally would not be delivered in that group. Like,
Right.
and I'm like, sorry, not sorry. I
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
literally love each and every one of, like, I love everyone, but it's like I'm not gonna drop my most freaking precious
Yeah.
remembrance and downloads to empty black
Yeah.
boxes on Zoom.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just
Yeah.
no. So,
Yeah.
okay, well, thank you for this part of the conversation.
I love
Obviously, I
it.
needed that. Yeah, so whatever happens next, but I love your like live attendance required. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of teachers should really have that, and
Yeah.
also like like for me, we're not going to be there without a break. We're not going to be there without laughing. We're not going to be there without having fun. Like obviously,
Yeah.
but it would be too pedantic. But you definitely want to have the interaction, like you said. It's important. And for me, like I said, I love questions. I love questions. I mean, look at where we're
Yeah.
what we're talking about, just having, just being present with each other. And
Right.
so I love that. And so I'm looking forward to that. And crossing my fingers that
Yes.
people are interested and, maybe pushing a little boundary for them. But I think it's always good. I also feel like whoever shows up for this is going to really, really benefit. Just and I did say
Exactly.
it's a transformative experience. You're going to end up a
Right.
different person than you started for sure.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Yeah. So like with that, it's a caliber. Like you're saying,
hmm,
this is a
yeah,
tradition. This is my medicine.
yeah,
This is very important. So yes, that's where we were. Thank you for bringing us back. So El Camino is upcoming, and please tell people where they can find you
yes.
on this internet.
Yes. So you can go to latineherbalism.com. That leads you right into my Curandera Remedies, which is a brand where I started everything from. For those people who were asking me, what are you doing? I was like, I'm taking this tea and I'm doing this meditation. That's how I started.
Mm,
Like that's how I
mm.
ended up making and offering things. It's still a brand out there. It's still, going up strong. And so you can find me on Curandera Remedies, curanderaremedies.com. And also it's the same one. I only have Instagram. I don't have anything else. So you can
Yeah.
find me on Instagram with Latine Herbalism or Curandera Remedies. So yeah,
Beautiful. And yeah, like you have some of the remedies there. Copal balm. I need
yeah.
some. I was like, what? I gotta
It's so
get some
funny.
of
I
that.
made that for me because I feel like I love the scent of copal.
I
And funny
love
enough,
copal.
this isn't it amazing? I love so there's the variety of different ones. My favorite one is when it's still young. And so that's what we
Okay.
use when it's young and it's not like hard resin yet. So
Mm,
we use that to make an oil and we use the oil to make the balm.
mm.
And I love it because I was at a women's gathering called Spirit Weavers this year and there was a no because of the it was in southern Oregon. It was very hot. It was very dry, so that we were not allowed to have mini fires, including charcoal incense, which makes a lot of sense. And
Mm-hmm.
so I happened to have brought the bomb with me, but it was like
Mm.
perfect because it's like a form of smudging without
Mm-hmm.
necessarily burning. And so this is really good also for those people who are sensitive to smoke, children with asthma, but
Mm.
who you kind of, understand may need a little like that energetic cleansing. So it's one of my favorite things. It's in my bag all the time now. I love it.
If my body can smell like copal, I'm like, I'm in.
You're down. I love it.
Josie, thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Thank you for what you're doing. So good to meet you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the space and the time. I hope people find something really beautiful in this conversation. I definitely loved it. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. I trust that they will. Thank you, everyone.